Alright, this training video is going to demonstrate how routeice is integrated into your Routeman and Routeman accompanying websites. Okay, the first thing that you're going to notice that you can do in Routeman is when you look at a regular customer, they have a hotshot button up here, the little lightning bolt symbol. But when you have a RIC, which is a routeice comm unit, assigned to a piece of equipment that's attached to a customer in Routeman, when you go to that customer, you're going to see a different symbol. So if I look at KCS, Key Consulting Services, you can see that it changes to an ice cube. And if you need to place a hotshot, you can still click on the button. The ice cube works just the same as the lightning bolt, but the idea is that you can train your staff to notice that this is a monitored customer, and maybe we don't need to create the hotshot without going to look and seeing the inventory levels, and you'll see how to do that in just a minute. But part of the payoff to having monitored boxes is you shouldn't have to continually go in and create hotshots over and over again. You should be able to set a threshold and let the hotshot be created when the time is right. Okay, next we're going to look at the dispatch. Okay, if you're not currently using the dispatch, you're going to want to start to use it. And the reason is because your routeice orders will be created automatically in the dispatch screen. And so if you look here in my example, I have the 3 red orders are all routeice orders. And I can see that because of the symbol that's right here. This order is actually a regular hotshot. So when you see this symbol with the order, that's just a regular order that you've created in Routeman, but routeice makes this symbol. And then you can automatically know which products are being ordered for that order because they are assigned to that RIC in that box. Okay, the next integration piece that I want to show you in dispatch is when you go to assign a route now, we'll go to a particular device, we'll choose assign a route, and in this case I'm going to choose my route that has routeice customers on it. Okay, when this page launches, you can see that there's something different than the way it used to be. You can see that in this column we get ice cubes that tell us which customers are being monitored by routeice. Now down here we've added one more step. Step 6 is set to ignore routeice by default, but we can actually turn this on so that it's always on this exclude feature. And what we do here is we determine, what is the threshold that I want to set to exclude any orders from this route. So in this case, I have 9 stops that I'm planning on sending my driver out to, but I want to take a moment, and before I send my drivers to these 4 stops that are monitored, if they're not going to deliver enough ice to make it worth sending them, I want to remove those from the stop automatically. And what you can do is you can choose whatever percentage that you want to set at this point. You can do that dynamically. So mine is defaulting to 50%, but for today's example, I'm going to punch in 40%. Now, when I hit this sync button, what's going to happen is Routeman is going to look and see what is the latest reading for each of these sensors. And it does it just that fast. And suddenly I can see that these 3 stops, the green ones, I need to go to those. But the red one, I might as well skip it because it's got at least 40%. And when you mouse over them, you can see exactly what the percentage is. So this one's at 31%, this one's at 34%. And so you may have a case where your threshold is set at 25 or 30% and it's not quite time for the system to have generated an order. But in this case, I want to go ahead and go to it because I'm already sending my driver very close, and it's so close to being at that threshold, I might as well go ahead and let him go. But in this case, up here on the KCS customer, there are actually 2 ricks. That's because there's 2 merchandisers, and one is measuring at 74% and the other one is measuring at 40%. And so I'm okay with skipping those because they're at or over 40%. Now when I hit submit, it's not going to create an order for this customer because it has a red ice cube, because I've excluded it because I've decided that it's an unproductive stop for today's deliveries. Okay, next we're going to take a look at Route Map. Alright, when you come into Route Map, you may not be used to using it, but there is an equipment widget down here at the bottom. When I open that, if I want to see my equipment, I will hit Show Me, and it's on zoom. So it will zoom to include all the different pieces of equipment that I have. Now this is Daryl's database, so I have some crazy situations where there's a piece of equipment in Hawaii and apparently one that's not geocoded, so it's at 00 longitude and latitude. But what I want to show you today is if I click the routeice button here, I get some new features. So in this section, I'm able to choose, do I want to only look at routeice units that have a certain percentage displaying? There's a caution buffer we'll talk about in a minute, and it's going to display in a green, yellow, or red icon for me. So I'm going to hit Show Me, and now it's going to zoom in and show me the different RICs that I have monitored for this database. So you can see that if it's displaying in green, that is above the threshold. That means it's not in the danger zone. If I click on that icon, I get information about that particular customer, that particular RIC, and what's going on with it. I can see the temperature, and I can see the product level, and I can see the event threshold. So in this case, even though it's at 40%, and in some cases I might have customers set at 40% to trigger an order, for this customer I have my threshold set at 15% because it's an account that sells very slow, and I know I will still have time to go make a delivery before they run out completely. And so it's displaying as green. These up here are displaying in red. Let's take a look at one of these. So it's at 31% currently, and the threshold is at 34.75%. But we know that the system's working because that was one of the orders that was in our dispatch queue just a moment ago when we were looking at it. And so an order has already been created, but if I'm looking on the route map equipment widget, I can see where my different routeice monitoring units are and what levels they're at. Down here, the yellow, this is an example of what we wanted to create here is a buffer zone that it hasn't crossed the threshold yet, but it's getting close. And so in this instance, our caution buffer is at 10%. And so what it does is it looks at the event threshold is 30%. It hasn't gotten below 30% yet, but it is within 10%, and so it's displaying as yellow. The idea here is that you don't miss something that would be a good delivery just because it's 1 or 2 or 3% over the threshold that you set. So you can control this caution buffer at your own discretion. You can say, well, I want a caution buffer of 25%. Well, if I hit that and I hit Show Me, you see that it changed this one up here because remember its threshold was 15% and it's measuring at 40, so that would be 25%. And so you can dynamically change that, and you're able to see on a map view which areas need the most attention. Okay, now we're going to take a look at routeice. Routeice.com is a separate website, a separate portal that we've built for you to be able to manage your RICs, your routeice comms, in a different way. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign in, and you can see that I come directly into my list of assigned RICs. And so I have the option here to do all ricks, but we default to the ones that are assigned. And so this is really helpful when you're first getting your first batch of ricks. If you haven't installed them and assigned them to a customer, they wouldn't show up if you have this assigned button checked. So you're not looking through a long list of units that are still sitting in a box in your warehouse waiting to be assigned. So here in a quick view, I can take a glance and see which units are measuring at which level, and they are color coded not just based on the number, but the number in relation to their specific threshold. So I'm able to set a specific threshold for each and every one of my customers, and it will not change colors until it hits that threshold. Here I have the battery level of the routeice COM being reported. As long as they're green, they're okay. The AC reflects the power of the actual merchandiser. So if your power goes out, wouldn't you like to know? This will turn red and you'll be getting an email alert. The temperature inside the box is being reported, and this has a customizable field as well. You can see that this one up here is 69 degrees Fahrenheit, which certainly should be red. All of these, in fact, should be red, but during our testing, we have played with the temperatures to make sure that if it is below a certain number, whatever number you set, it's displaying as blue, and it's not a problem. So you can control that independently per customer. The reading column tells us the last time that it was read. As long as the clock symbols are green, that means you've gotten a reading in the last 12 hours. And if you want to know specifically, if you mouse over, this one tells me it was read at 1:38, and right now it's about 3 hours past that. If I come down, each one is taking their own reading on their own schedule, and so you can always see when was my last reading when I measured this amount here. Next, I have the RIC ID. This is the serial number of the actual monitor. Then I list my customer that I've assigned it to in Routeman. Then I get a graphical picture of what's going on inside the box, and so you can see each sensor that's measured. Up at the top, we do have a search function, so once your list has grown pretty long, you can do a search for a particular customer and narrow down what you're looking at. If you're working within the website for a long time, let's say you just leave it open, you go to lunch, you come back and you want to make sure that you have the latest data, you don't have to log out and log back in. You can just choose to hit this reload button and it does a quick search and gives you the latest information again. Okay, over here on the right, we have 3 dots, and if we click on them, we have a few options. One is to view details. And so you notice this opens a completely separate page that's going to give us more information about the RIC and the customer that it's at and the equipment. I will go ahead and mention that we have these little buttons up here. These are called chips. And if I turn these chips off, the information for that particular chip vanishes. But we default to having all of them on display. The idea here is if you're working on a smaller screen or something like that, it may be more manageable to not have to display all of those, but we want to give you all the information in one place if you need it. So I have my customer information. I have the details that are being pulled out of Routeman. So if I've included all these details in Routeman in my equipment module, they'll be displaying here. Then I have the RIC specific information like the temperature threshold, the battery level, the last time it communicated, and the geolocation. You'll notice up here I have a little pencil to edit. The only thing that you would edit in this particular section is the temperature. So let's say I wanted to make this one 25 degrees Fahrenheit was the new threshold. It's simple as that. I've just saved it. Here I have the installation pattern. This is helpful in giving us a visual of what's going on inside the box. So during installation, the installer actually gets to pick, do they have a perpendicular way of installing or a parallel way of installing, and in the future we may have some other configurations. But by seeing the installation pattern, then I can see, looking at this graph, which part of the box has which quantity of product left in it. Over here we have the chart denoting what the threshold is, and so we can really get a picture of what's going on inside the box. I've set my inventory threshold for this box at 33%. The height of my box is 1300 millimeters, and I have small bags as my product. The offset is an option that you may or may not ever use. This would be for a customer that doesn't like to fill the box up completely. If you deliver to a customer that only wants you to fill it up to a certain amount every time, and you want to consider that as being 100% full, you can enter the amount, the distance in millimeters from the top of the box that you want to remain empty or that you don't want to count as part of the inventory level, and we will use math to tell you from that point down to the bottom what percentage you're at. Okay, if I need to make a change here, I can choose the edit button up here, and I can choose the threshold, the height, the offset, or even the product. All right, coming back out of the details, we're going to click on these three little dots one more time and show map. And you can see that all it does is drop the routeice icon on the map so that you can get a glimpse of where this customer is at here on routeice.com. All right, there certainly will be more features built into routeice over time. There will be much more training to be done, but I just want you to understand just how much routeice will be integrated within Routeman right from the beginning, and we want to make these tools available to you so that you can use business logic to really improve the efficiency of your operations. If you have any questions or you need help going over these in more detail, certainly, as always, give the KCS office a call. We'll be happy to help.